Okay, everyone, it's 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this Wednesday, Hot Wednesday. We have some great things for you today. I'm sure all of you have been starting up school, and I'm sure there's a lot to cover and a lot of questions, so we're just going to jump right into it. Of course, I have my lovely housekeeping items I would like to cover. Oops. Sorry. Be sure, if you haven't done so already, to type your email into the chat box so that you receive your training certificate. Use the chat box to ask questions, and be sure to put that question mark at the end of your question, please. Go ahead and turn on your video and camera if you can, and please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. There's a lot of us on here, so it helps us so we can hear each other. Our agenda for today, we will be reviewing information you need to know. We'll go through administrative reminders. We'll talk about food service considerations, food safety in school food service. We have some updates from Nebraska Thursdays, and of course, questions and answers at the end of the presentation. I'm going to hand it over to Sean if she's ready.
I am ready. It is so good to see everyone. And we have, as Allie said, we have a lot of information to cover today. And so let's start out just talking about what's coming up. Information you need to know. Well, mark your calendars. The next Serving Up Great School Meals is scheduled for September 9th at 2 o'clock. And always remember, if you're unable to join us during the actual Zoom presentation, we do record these, and they're available on the Nutrition Services website, the home page, at the bottom of the page. So you have to scroll down to find the previous recorded Serving Up Great School Meals, but they're available to you if you can't join us. So keep that in mind. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about is the School Nutrition Association. This just came across my desk yesterday in my email, and I'm sure many of you saw this email that was sent out, but the School Nutrition Association hosts the Back to School webinar series, and the one that is scheduled for tomorrow, which would be August 27th at 2 o'clock, really looks good. It says, make school nutrition an integral part of the education day with any academic schedule. So this webinar is going to be talking about the different ways that schools are offering students to learn. And so it will have the nutrition part of that for the remote learner or virtual learner, and also those that are following an alternate schedule or a hybrid schedule. So I think it looks really good, but it does require pre-registration, and you have to go to the website to register. So just wanted to remind you about that. And then let's move on to probably one of the more important things that we're going to be discussing, because we've talked about it for weeks, that we have been awaiting some responses from USDA on the questions that we have regarding what school food service needs to look like for this coming year. And this was released, this policy memo was released last Friday, August 21st. And if you've never seen a policy memo, this is the top portion of a policy memo. And so we've got the date when it's released, the memo code. So this one just tells us what programs it applies to. It applies to the school meals program. This applies to the child and adult care food program and the summer food service program. And it's the question and answers for child nutrition programs during school year 2021, number 5. And so the rest of the memo outlines the question and answers, and we're going to go through each one of those in a little bit more depth. But wanted to show you, this is what we get from USDA. And then we take that information and we try and interpret it so that you understand what is happening. So let's move on to the next slide. And so the policy number is 24/2020. And question and answers number 1 and 2. This addresses if schools choose to use the available flexibility issued in the non-congregate meal service waiver, they must provide meals to students participating in remote virtual learning. So right there is the answer to our question. In regard, do meals have to be offered to remote virtual learners? It is, if you choose to use that flexibility for non-congregate meal service waiver, then yes. But if a school chooses not to offer non-congregate meals, then you do not. And Donna's going to go into this a little bit more in detail in the food service considerations. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it right now. Question and answer number 3, if school is not in session, or what is considered an instructional day, meals may not be claimed for reimbursement, which makes sense that if school's not in session, you can't claim meals. Question and answer number 4. Non-congregate meals offered to remote virtual learners and those following an alternate schedule may be distributed at any school within the school food authority. An accurate meal counting system must be implemented to reflect the number of free, reduced, and paid lunches served to eligible students according to feeding site which they are enrolled. So I think this gets back to our discussion at our last Serving Up Greater School Meals, in that you have to count the students for the site that they're enrolled in, and that would be determined how the school chooses to do that. But to claim those meals, it's by the feeding site they're enrolled, and you are claiming by paid, free, and reduced. Let's move on to the next page. Question and answer number 5. The state agency, which would be the Nebraska Department of Education Nutrition Services, our office, is required to report to USDA the implementation of all waivers utilized. And so remember what our waivers are that we have use of for this current school year. We have the meal pattern flexibility. We have the non-congregate meal waiver. We have flexibility in meal service times. And we have, all of a sudden, I can't think of the last one. Maybe there are just the 3. Non-congregate meal, oh, parent pickup. I'm sorry, I forgot about the parent pickup. Parents can pick up, guardians can pick up, as long as the school ensures the integrity that those meals are being, those meals are intended for enrolled students at the feeding site. So those are our 4 waiver flexibilities. So as a result of this requirement, NDE will survey school food authorities for the utilization of these waivers. So that responsibility falls back on the state agency to turn around and survey our SFAs to see who is utilizing those waivers and to what extent they're utilizing those 4 waivers. So expect a survey. Probably will not be coming out in August. Look for it in probably September, early October, where we will have to have an idea of what waivers you have implemented or plan to implement this school year. Question and answer number 6. The "and Justice for All" poster does not need to be posted in each classroom if meal service takes place there. So we had that discussion a couple of weeks ago about, does it need to be posted in individual classrooms if meals are served in the classroom? And the answer is no. But instead, the poster must be displayed in a prominent area visible to students and adults at each feeding site. So one poster, one feeding site displayed in a prominent area. Moving on. Question and answers 7 through 12 contains information on COVID-19 child nutrition response number 36, nationwide waiver to allow meal pattern flexibility in child nutrition programs. This is extension number 4. It is the state agency's responsibility to review requests from local program operators. Requests must be targeted and justified on plans to support access to nutritious meals while minimizing potential exposure to COVID-19. So this goes back to the meal pattern flexibility waiver that was initially released in the summer, okay? Well, when school closed in March, it extended to the school meals pattern for those schools that stayed on the school meals pattern, and for those schools that implemented the summer feeding program. So this is just an extension of that waiver, that if a meal flexibility is needed, then it is on an individual basis that has to be submitted to the state agency, stating what the plan is, and it has to have support and justification that nutritious meals will continue to be offered while minimizing the risk. So that was addressed in several questions in the question and answers. And so this is the quick summary of what that entails. As we move on down to question and answers number 13 through 16, this addresses water. Potable water is not required to be provided to students consuming meals off-site. So we have an answer to that. That was a question that was asked, and I believe at the time we were pretty sure that no, you did not have to provide meals for grab and go or for meals taken off-site. And so now we have the answer. However, lunch meals consumed on-site must meet the potable water requirement. So just as it is during normal operations, water still needs to be offered to students. Potable water requirement applies to lunch meals eaten in the cafeteria and classroom. Potable water requirement does not apply to breakfast meals eaten in the classroom. So if you are offering breakfast meals in the cafeteria, yes, you have to provide water. If you are providing lunch meals either in the classroom or in the cafeteria, water needs to be provided. And we had the discussion, well, what about if the student has their own water bottle with them? And we had said that was an acceptable way of offering water. So as we kind of went through those rather quickly, I want you to enter in the chat box if you have any questions regarding those answers we received from USDA, and we will address those at the end of our presentation today. But it is wonderful to get some answers from USDA. And we'll move forward on other administrative reminders. Now, most schools are in session. I know we still have some that will be starting next week. and maybe some that will be starting in early September. But the majority of Nebraska schools have started. And so as administrative reminders, direct certification lists. Direct certification lists are when that match has been made with a school enrollment for students and a database with Health and Human Services that students qualify for assistance programs that make them eligible for free or reduced meals. So they're automatically matched. This is very important because we want to make sure that our students are receiving the benefits that they are entitled to. And so direct certification lists, enrollments need to be current. Upload into the CMP system or advisor. The next step is to notify households of students' eligibility. The School Food Authority household approval and denial letter must contain the same information as the one on the Nutrition Services website, and that can be found under the forms and resources. So we've made the determination students are eligible. Now we need to notify the households of that eligibility. The next bullet on this page is approve income eligibility applications. So if the students are not on our direct certification list, they can still apply for meal benefits through a paper application called the income eligibility application. When those are received, the determining official needs to make the determination and sign and date the application. Students that had benefits in the last school year 1920, have a 30 school day carryover from the previous school year. That carryover ends when a new determination of eligibility has been made or on the 31st operating day of the new school year if an application or a determination has not been made. Other important administrative reminders that need to be happening right now is the school meals application packet needs to be completed and submitted. It is completed in the CMP system, the online system. We need to make sure you are aware that food safety inspections that were received in school year 1920, this section can also be completed. It has an actual due date of October 15th, but we're reporting information from the previous school year. Individuals that would be completing this would be reporting 0, 1, or 2 health inspections for each feeding site. If a feeding site didn't have any health inspections, 0, that's the number that's reported. The August claim for reimbursement cannot be entered without an approved school meals application. So we are on August 26th right now. And so probably many bookkeepers will be wanting to submit the August claim for reimbursement next week because we will be in September. But if the application has not been completed, has not been approved by our office, then that claim will not be processed and it can't be even entered unless the application has been approved. Once again, we want to make sure everybody is aware that they should be notifying our office if there are new food service managers, claim contacts, or authorized representatives. This is the area of the application that is marked. It is a box that indicates if there is someone new in that position. We have updated our training on our Nutrition Services website and still in the process, but there are new trainings under bookkeeping and under the school food service manager section. Allie, time for the polling question.
Yes, we have a quick polling question for you guys today. Give me 1 second. It's just one question today. If you would take a moment to answer it. We're just wondering if your school is offering alternative learning schedules with remote meals. Simple yes or no. We have a few more to answer. I think that's everyone. Can share with the group the response. It looks like a majority of you are not offering those remote meals. We were just curious where everybody was landing so far as the school year got started. And maybe some of you haven't started school yet. So thank you for sharing that.
And so with that, I believe we are to food service considerations. And Donna, would you lead us through this part of the training?
I will. Thank you, Sean. And it's so good to see so many of you here today. I didn't know what to expect because I know you are extremely busy. So I want to thank you for, joining us for this session. A couple of things that are reminders. We have talked about these before. If you are serving in the classroom, and that might be another question we could ask at some point, to find out how many of you are, that would be interesting. If you are implementing offer versus serve, just a reminder that all food components in the required portionate sizes must be offered, and there also must be signage or some kind of method to inform students what choices are available. This is easier if students understand the meal pattern, and definitely the teachers and staff in the classroom must be well trained in offer versus serve requirements. And let's face it, we can all use an offer versus serve update. I have to look at the handout several times a year myself to refresh my memory on how it goes. So that type of training is important. The second one on this slide is the school meals program. And basically, we just want to make sure that you know that if you are in session or providing meals for any kind of learning situation in person, if you have an alternate schedule going on, or remote learning, that you are using the school meals program, the school breakfast program, the National School Lunch Program. Okay, next slide. All right, so you have to forgive me if I don't look directly at you all the time. I have 3 screens going and prompts on each one, so I remember what I'm doing here. Now, we're going to discuss how your food service operation can adapt to a remote learning situation. And this section that I'm going to be talking about here actually was born 2 weeks ago when I had one slide with one question on it, and then it promoted a lot of different questions from you, which we really appreciate. And Elaine, I know you're on you're participating today. So I want to thank you for some of your questions in addition to other people. But this type of situation can occur suddenly. I think some of you have already experienced this, where you're going from full in-person learning to maybe what's known as maybe a hybrid method or an A/B schedule or something like that. So there's some remote learning going on. And there's a chance it could happen at any of your schools, basically. There are schools in Nebraska that have already experienced a change from in school to at least a partial remote learning situation. And what we would like to do with this section is to give you some information so that will help you to be prepared if this comes about. And I know I talked to Erna at Auburn earlier today, and I told her I'm going to be talking about you this afternoon because Erna just found out last week that Auburn was moving this week to an A-B schedule, half in school, half remote, and then switching the next week. So I think a lot of schools have those plans in place and you just never know when it's going to happen. So we came up with a set of questions that we think with your help are, we'll give you some of the information that you need. And then what I want you to do, please, is put any other questions you might have as we go through this in the chat box. And as Sean mentioned earlier, we'll answer those questions at the end of the presentation, because you guys know better than we what information you need and what you need to have to make this happen. So basically, based on the first question we're going to talk about is, do you have to provide meals for remote learners? Now, Sean touched on this earlier with the Q&A that came out. Based on USDA's COVID response waivers, in particular, these three that are listed, the non-congregate feeding, mealtime flexibility, and parent pickup, school meals may be provided to students who do not attend school in person. Now notice that right now, it's may is underlined. So at the current time, this is a decision made by the school district. However, it also is important to note that if even one student who is learning remotely is offered meals, then all remote learning students must be offered meals, because equity is very important here. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so then we started talking about well, I keep saying in the office, in our separate offices all together on Zoom, we talked about what information does the school need to proceed with putting together a plan. And we came up with 4 major points. How you will communicate meal availability to households, how to distribute the meals, how are you going to track the meals? And then we also thought, you know, we need to give you some guidance on how you should document these meals on production records, particularly if you are running hot meals during the day and then providing cold box sack meals or take-home meals later that same day. So basically, starting with the first one, to communicate meal availability, it's, you know, you can communicate that through the usual channels that you use for your households: phone calls, emails, texts, putting it on the school website. Many of you already experienced having to communicate with your households if you went to the summer food service program, or if you stayed with NSLP this spring and you switched over and you had to, and then we had a couple of changes in waivers, and so you had to communicate again. So that's pretty easy. But we thought maybe you might want to have some guidance on what the communication should include. And again, if you have some more ideas here that you would like to offer and share with us in the chat box, we'd appreciate that. So one thing you'll need to do is let the school know if your students will participate. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. How and when they will be ordering meals, how and when the meals will be distributed, picked up, delivered, however you want to handle that. And then this is important, how the meals will be counted or charged at the point of service at time of pickup. And this is something we'll go into in more detail later, because this is a really important concept to get a hold of. We also need to mention that identification is required, such as the student ID number or other form of identification. So that's important too. Okay, I think Allie's ahead of me. Man, she's really good with these slides. Okay, so distribution of meals is the second point. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple of different situations here. Let's say that you have alternating schedule students, and I'm going to use Lincoln as an example. They have students in their high schools going 3 days one week, 2 days the next. So let's say that first week group A goes to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but they want take-home meals for Thursday, Friday. Well, it's best, as we know, because of food safety, to hand out those meals at close to the end of the day. And actually, as they're walking out the door would be the best case scenario, because we don't want those meals to go bad or to, you know, not be able to be used. These meals also need to include directions on proper handling. And I bet 99% of you did this, maybe even 100% when you gave out meals this summer. And it's also important too, we were thinking that the household should be informed of how these meals will be distributed and also be given the proper handling of meals. Because what we kept thinking about, and this was brought, I think someone here in this group brought this up. What if the student goes out of the building, picks up the meals, stuffs them in his backpack, and then forgets about them, takes them home and forgets about them? Well, knowing if someone in the household knows that this is happening, there's a greater chance that the meals may be saved and put properly stored and handled. And so that's just kind of a backup that we thought may be handy. Okay, so that's alternating schedule for students that are in class part of the time in the building and then out doing remote learning part of the time. What about full-time remote learners? And I know that, and again, LPS, I think Edith is on the call, but I'm not picking on you, but you have a lot going on with your meal distribution. And I believe that you are giving out possibly 5 meals per day or for the whole week on a Saturday. And so that might be a different situation where you might give more than 1 or 2 meals at a time and distribute them properly. Now we need to note that parents are allowed to pick up meals for enrolled students. The student does not have to be present, okay? However, we've been asked this quite often, and it is a good question. Can someone other than a student's parent pick up meals for that student? Yes, because of the parent pickup waiver, this was extended and allows for alternate pickup people. So the USDA is really, it's really important that we maintain program integrity. So meals should be provided to only enrolled students, and duplicate meals are not provided. So the USDA tells us that with this waiver, you must have documentation on file, but it allows you to have say a parent or guardian can sign a consent form for someone else, maybe a next door neighbor who's home when they're not home. This is a really important thing because, you know, people do have different schedules and maybe they can't make it to pick up the meals. So if there is documentation such as a signed consent form for someone else to pick up the meals, then you're okie dokie, good to go. Okay, so this was something that was mentioned at the last SUGSM, and it is, again, a very good question because I focused mainly on, 2 weeks ago, focused mainly on the point of service, and that's where, you know, the accountability ends for the schools at the point of service. But then I was asked, well, you can't give a student 2 meals in one day, so how are you going to track the extra meal? And that's perfectly correct because meals must be claimed on the day they are meant to be consumed. So going back to Lincoln, giving meals out on Wednesday for Thursday and Friday, I believe that a lot of schools are using a paper roster to do this. And I now have to go to my notes because I made some notes for me to read so I remember that.
We are tracking them by paper, but then we're putting them into our point of sale because you got to be able to charge them the reduced and paid fee. So the meals that are for the, like today's meals that are for Thursday are put in on Thursday, and the meals that are for Friday are put in Friday into that child's account.
Yeah, thank you, Edith, for saying that, because that's, yeah, you need to have, somebody is going to be doing that later, but you have to wait till Thursday and till Friday before you can do that, right?
Right, our point of sale will not allow us to put them in ahead. They're working on a program for that, but right now we have a paper form that they fill out for the meals, and then each day we check them off as we enter them into the POS because we got to track those reduced and paid students.
Yeah, that's one of the major points between doing this at this time of year and summer, right? Because summer was, for most of you, you just had to mark the number of meals you handed out and they were all free. Now it's an issue of charging properly as free, reduced, and paid. And so we've talked to some schools that are either having students write down their name and ID number on a piece of paper or a roster as they pick up the meals, or especially for some of the smaller schools, you may know which students, you might have a list, a roster already put together with ID numbers of students who are going to pick up meals on certain days. And then you can just check them off at what would be the POS for picking up those meals. And again, Edith, thank you for chiming in on that. That's awesome. So again, accountability for these meals is at the point of service. And basically that, again, when I said this before, this means that once those meals have left the point of service, the school does not have to track them. Because what if a student takes a meal home and then is sick the next day? Do you have to know that so the meal is not counted? No. Because this is not going to be a perfect system and this is unusual circumstances that we're dealing with here. So once that meal is documented at the POS on the roster or however it's done that day, that meal will be claimed and the school does not have to track it down and find out, exactly where if it ended up in someone's tummy or whose tummy it ended up in, I guess I should say. Okay, so next one. And I believe this is the last point. The production records, I believe someone, maybe Elaine, asked about this, another awesome question. Separate production records are recommended for the take-home meals. And again, this is especially important if you are, you have your regular production record for your hot meal on the line or a cold meal or whatever, but your meal you're serving in-house versus the take-home meals. We also would like to have or need to have those production records labeled with the date and day each meal is intended to be consumed. So again, Thursday meals would have Thursday's date and day, Friday meals, Friday's day and date. And this, how it is with production records, we have to have some decent production records so that we can make sure that schools are meeting meal pattern, because you're going to be working with two different menus at this point. And so that makes it more complicated. All right, next slide, please. Okay, just a couple of reminders here about things that I've talked about over and over, but I love talking about them. So here we go again. And this is kind of exciting. This document from DHHS Department of Environment and Energy, which is where the health inspector, Mandy Carney, is housed. And she is the, what would you say, boss of all the other health inspectors, Beth, across the states? Is that fair to say? Okay. And this is a long-awaited document that has a lot of great information. COVID-19 frequently asked questions for food service professionals. It has information about salad bars and just all kinds of things in there that's helpful. It is being prepared for uploading onto our website, I believe, and probably shouldn't be too much longer before that takes place. So we hope to see it soon. And I believe, Beth, are we still sending it out to everyone? Okay, great. Okay.
It's sent out.
It has already been sent out?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, okay, I'm late. You guys already know that. And
No, they just got sent today.
Oh, okay.
So they probably don't have it yet.
Well, it's really going to be helpful. I think that you'll find it's a helpful document. Okay, and the last slide for me is, again, I want to talk about Launch Nebraska. I love that site. We're not going to go to the site today, but want to, again, remind you that there are now 2 documents on that site that are very helpful. And one is, and they're both specific to food service, the Nutrition Services Supporting Considerations is in the Conditions for Learning section, and it provides information to assist in the preparation and implementation of strategies to ensure that everyone stays safe as they return to school. And the newest document, Nebraska Considerations for Cafeterias and School Meals, is the new guidance document that is organized by risk level. So you may find that even more helpful. I'm finding that as I talk to schools, they call in and they have questions, we end up saying, first of all, well, what risk level are you at? And whether your health department uses the colored risk level meter, or there's some other way of doing this. This document is organized by green, yellow, orange, and red, and it gives you guidance for each of those levels. So it's also a very good resource, 2 resources on that website. So I believe now I get to hand over the baton to Beth, who's going to talk more about food safety.
I am. Okay, so we're going to talk about food safety and COVID. We are trying to keep everything as current as possible with the information. It's kind of like the food code. It has to go through several people before it gets to us. For example, the FAQ from the Department of Health and Human Services, Environmental and Energy Food Safety Inspection Office. Mandy started talking about the FAQ back in the end of June, and we are just now getting it because it has to go through so many places to be approved. And it took the longest in the governor's office, so going through every person that needs to look at it. But it is, I did send it to you guys in an email with some other things today. So we're going to talk about fruit and veggie bars because this is a very popular question that comes into us. So self-serve bars, food bars, condiments, and water, if they are self-serve, are high risk. Salad bars, food bars, condiments, water may be served by a staff member who is masked and gloved. Plexiglass should cover the areas that were previously not covered by sneeze guards for serving, and that's considered a low risk. Serving practices for grab and go, pre-portioned, pre-packaged items, sneeze guard, those items that don't have lids or covers of any kind, those have to be underneath a sneeze guard. All pre-portioned items that have lids or a cover of some type may be offered self-serve if separated far enough apart that the student will not touch the items. If the student touches more than one item, if they touch the one next to it, they must take it. Okay, the next slide, thanks. Okay, so that's it on the service questions that we've had. Now we're going to talk about sanitizers versus disinfectants because we've had a lot of people asking about hand sanitizer being used. So hand sanitizers and disinfectants are 2 antimicrobial pesticides, and they are regulated by the EPA for surfaces and the FDA for anything that is food related. Sanitizers eliminate or reduce the number of bacteria on surfaces, and disinfectant products kill bacteria and viruses on surfaces. The difference may be only the strength of the solution. So maybe if you have bleach or quartz, all you have to do is increase the quantity or the strength that you're preparing your solution. Make sure that you read the label or the safety data sheets to make sure that you have the correct solution and amount for the disinfectant or the sanitizer. Next slide. So I wanted to give you an example. This is from the Department of the Health Department for Lincoln, Lancaster County. This is their mixing criteria that they came up for bleach, and that's why I used it. So they have a sanitizer at 100 parts per million. They have disinfectant at 600 parts per million. And then if you're dealing with any bodily fluids, it's 5,000 parts per million. So that's kind of why there's a difference. It's the sanitizer for bleach, you're not putting in as much. If you notice that for a quart of water, you're putting in a half a teaspoon of the 5.25 to 6% of the sodium chloride. And if it's the 8.25%, then it's 1/4. So just make sure you read your label. That's so important. Next slide. Okay, so disinfectant use. And this goes back to the hand sanitizer eventually. Wash, disinfect, and rinse the high-touch surfaces, serving lines, tables, chairs between each lunch period. We know that some of you are short on time between the lunch periods, and the disinfectant that you are using is hard to get wiped, rinsed off again before the next group comes in. So look to see if you can use a different sanitizer that has a shortened time, or if you go a higher concentration on the label or the safety data sheets so that they can give it. And usually when the drying time, it's for disinfecting, you have to have a visibly wet to make sure that it is doing the kill before you wipe it. So watch your label or your safety data sheet for the time on how long your disinfectant must stay on it. Now, I know some people are being supplied their disinfectant by the custodians, which is great, but please ask them what length of time must be left on the tables before you wipe it off. And I know some people are not wiping it off, but we really need to, because the food service inspectors are very fearful that it will build up over time and become very toxic at the end of the lunch period. They don't want anyone to get sick. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then the last thing is hand sanitizer can only be used for hands unless the hand sanitizer label says that it can be used for other items. Mandy and I have been searching for hand sanitizer information, and we have not found any of the safety data sheets that say that it can be used for anything other than hands. Okay. Posters on the face mask to wear. The COVID CDC has a great resource for mask use, and it's very simple, and you can post it. It talks about the do's and don'ts on it, and someone had requested that, so we put that up there, and it will be posted. We also have several other references for you, and there's lots of great references out there and resources. So the COVID-19 on our homepage, towards the bottom of the COVID information, we have our standard operating procedures for when you're closing and doing at-home meals, and other pandemic resources and responses. Next page. And we also have our Department of, it says DHHS's public health, but they've changed it, environmental health. Actually, it's environmental and energy food inspection office. So if you are looking for this, It is on our web page, the main page of the nutrition services under COVID, and it's towards the bottom of the page. And it lists your food safety inspections and the area that they cover. And you all should get to know, if you don't know your food safety inspectors, you need to know them. Most of the counties have the state, the DHHS inspectors, except for Hall, Lincoln, Lancaster County, and Douglas County. Those are the ones that do their own inspections. And once in a while, I know Mandy and Colton stop in to see Edith every once in a while. It just depends on their schedule and what they are doing. Food safety inspections will be starting this week or next, depending on when the inspector can get out. They're not as busy since the outdoor swimming pools have now started to close. So they will be out starting probably next week. If you do have any restrictions on visitors, because I was notified that someone was worried that their health inspector would be stopped at the front door and not allowed in, please let your health inspector know. They will be coming with masks and gloves, but if you have any other personal protective gear that they need to wear, please notify them, and also tell them if they need to call ahead like a couple minutes before they get to the school so that they can get in. And if you don't feel comfortable calling your health department or your health inspector, please just give me a call and we will do it, or you can email me. And another resource that we have for you is ICN. All the training on ICN is free because it is supported by the USDA, and they have great COVID webinars. It's a great site for all kinds of training, but they really have done a nice job on the COVID-19. And they have lots of resources on there for you. And I believe that is my last slide. And Sarah's up, or Donna, are you doing it?
Donna shakes her head. Hi, everyone. I just have a couple of updates. We're going to shift gears here real quick and give those of you that had an application in for the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, I know you're anxiously awaiting award status and notification. And Nebraska has recently, just last week, received award notification from USDA. So this is a little bit later than it typically is, not surprising with the circumstances. So we have those awards from USDA now for the school year 2021 for the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. And our total award amount is what it typically is, which is over $2 million. And we're starting to work through the internal processes and procedures that we need to now in our office to determine the FFVP awarded sites and then those awarded amounts. So all districts that applied for the program, you will be notified either way, whether awarded or not, what your status is there in the next couple of weeks. So thanks for your patience as we get through this process. And then on the second bullet here, I just wanted to point out that although we haven't made award announcements yet, there is a memo that USDA has issued regarding questions and answers for operations of FFVP this school year with COVID. And that is for school buildings, whether they are having closures or for school food authorities that are operating during coronavirus. And it will include schools operating FFVP. And the guidelines are going to be listed here. It's Memo SP 23-2020. And we will go into more detail with this once we've awarded to sites, but we'll include in your award letters this memo, a PDF version of it, so that you have it on hand. But feel free to reach out to me with questions once you've had a chance to review that. And for those of you that are awarded, we can send out more helpful information about that once we're at that point. And then just a reminder that the FFVP funds for school year 2021 should not be spent, even if you're fairly certain you will be awarded. They shouldn't be spent until after your district has received official notification from us of your award status. So you'll want to reference on your award letter when it does come what your official start date for spending funds will be. So wait for that letter. That's what I have for that FFVP update. And then a real quick reminder, some of you may have already heard this, but we are doing a reminder to those of you that were registered in school year 1920 for Nebraska Thursdays, that to stay registered for the program, there is a quick end of year survey that we need to get back from you. And having that by September 15th will ensure that you're included in some fun promotions that we're doing in preparation for October, which is Farm to School Month. So that link there on the second bullet is for those of you that were registered last year. And if you were registered last year and you haven't completed your survey, I will send out another reminder before September 15th. And for those of you that would be new, that's what that first bullet is. And so we encourage you to register and take advantage of our recipe portal. That link there is on our website. And let's see, why don't we move to that next slide, Allie? And we can see here. So this is just a little bit of a motivation. We have this We Love Nebraska Thursdays vinyl banner. It's 16 by 24 inches. And all schools that are registered by the time we get these printed and shipped in October will receive one of these. And we have new promotional items on the portal for those schools that are registered for Nebraska Thursdays. Also, you can be entered into a giveaway to receive one of 2 Tower Gardens, all inclusive shipping and all materials needed if you're registered for Nebraska Thursdays. So just a reminder to do that before we get too far along in next month. Thanks.
Well, I hope you have had an opportunity to enter your questions into the chat box. We will go ahead and start looking at those. If you still have questions, it's not too late to enter those into the chat box. So let's pull up our chat box and start at the top. One of the questions that came in is, so if the student brings their own water bottles to the cafeteria, do we still need to have a water source? Yes. I don't think the expectation is that the child wouldn't have access to water. So how would they get water during the school day? Would a pitcher be available that could be poured by a school staff person into their water bottle? So I think the answer is yes. They still need to have access to a water source during the day. Many schools have the fountains that they just put their water container under, and then it flows into whatever they bring. But most water fountains are shut off, the traditional water fountains, so they still need to have some source of getting water during the school day. As we look at the chat box, let's see what else is in there for us. One of the questions that was asked, so if eligibility for the new school year goes from free to paid, can we wait until school day 31st to make that change in the system rather than the date the application is dated? And the answer to that is no. Once a new determination is made of the student's eligibility, then that determination is in effect. So once that has been determined, then the carryover from the previous year ends. And it doesn't go by the date the application is dated. It is the date the determination is made by the determining official. The next question, with the preparation of the meals, do we need to offer more than one option of fruit and vegetable, even if we offer different subgroups throughout the week? So that question is interesting because we have the vegetable subgroups that have to be met. We have a daily requirement for vegetables, and then we have our weekly subgroup requirement. And so both of those requirements need to be met. And then with the fruit requirement, depending on the grade group that we're addressing, so for K through 8, it's a half a cup daily. And for 9 through 12, it's 1 cup. So we still need to make sure that we are offering the portion size requirement and meeting the weekly subgroups for the fruit and vegetable. Do you need to offer multiple options? That would be up to the school to do that, as long as you are meeting the portion size requirement. Some schools offer one option, some schools offer many options.
John, there was an earlier question that asks the Justice for All poster, does it just need to be in the kitchen if they are coming through, or do we need them in the area where they eat?
It needs to be in a prominent area. If they are coming through the cafeteria, it can be either in the service area where meals are where they go through the line, or it can be in the dining area, just so that it's displayed so students can see it. If you are offering meals in the classroom and they're not going through the cafeteria, then perhaps maybe it needs to be in a more central location so that all students can see it during the school day. So maybe on a bulletin board outside the cafeteria, somewhere where they would be able to see the And Justice for All poster. I know another question that came in is, how do we get those posters? You would contact our office via email that you need a poster, and we would send it to you. If you don't have the poster from last year, we will send those to you, but just contact our office, Nutrition Services. You can contact one of the program specialists and we will take care of that for you. Next question in the chat box. I'm kind of going back and forth, so you'll have to forgive me as we navigate through the chat box. Masks and gloves are required serving food, but what is required for the person at the computer student check-in? If they are behind a plexiglass barrier, are they still required to wear a mask? Beth?
That's up to the school. And if they are handling, like if you guys have IDs at the students, she's scanning, their POS person is scanning, or if she's touching anything from the student, it is probably highly recommended that she uses gloves. But it's totally up to the school on that, since she's behind a plexiglass.
Great, thank you. If milk is staggered on a table, is it okay for kids to grab them? Can they set their tray on the table and then come back up for milk? Beth?
Yes. Yes, they can do that. You probably want them to grab it the first time, or if it's for the younger kids and they can't, carry the milk and the tray, maybe have a pair or someone that's assisting out there, grab it for them.
Thank you. Many schools have installed bottle fillers for the purpose of filling the water bottles, and I have heard that from many schools, and that is certainly acceptable. The next question, I have antibacterial wipes that are alcohol and bleach free. Oh my gosh, it has benzyl chlorium. I'm just going to kind of run by that word, chloride as an ingredient. Is that okay to use as a food safe cleaner?
Check the CDC list for that. They have a list of approved food safe disinfectants and sanitizers. So check on that. I don't know that it is.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll ask Mandy too, but I don't think it is.
Okay. We used to use tickets for extras purchased. We are not doing that. They want to use a stamp on their hand and the child will show us their hand. My concern is they would be using same stamp on each child. It would be touching different children. Anyone want to comment on that situation that is being described?
I don't think that's a good practice because it's touching everyone. It's kind of like the self-serve items. You don't want people touching everything. I will send that up to Mandy too.
Okay, thank you. I heard that in Iowa that one school is using saran wrap as a barrier so students can sit at the tables. Can we do that too? And we would toss it daily. So I'm trying to envision in my head how they're wrapping that saran wrap as a barrier. Like, can't, maybe, Karen, can you maybe describe that a little bit more to us? You know, I just envision that saran wrap around a child, and I know that's not what you're talking about.
I know it sounds weird, but I guess what like one of my coworkers saw, it was on the end of the table. They had posts and they would saran wrap, so it'd be like a window between the both sides.
Wow.
And then they would toss it. And I just couldn't imagine just the work that would entail, because you know our saran wrap is like huge. And
Now, I can't envision that either, and the time it would take to do that. And once a child sat there, then you'd have to get rid of it and wrap it again for the next child. So to me, that doesn't sound very feasible, but I certainly would love to hear someone else weigh in from this nice group we have with us. Food service managers, is this reasonable? Everybody's still processing it. Probably not. Well, you know, it's very inventive. And it may work for a small school. I don't know.
Does anyone else have any ideas or anything that you're using to make a barrier on tables so that you can sit more students, or is anyone?
This is Rosie from the Loomis School, and we put blocks with plexiglass in the middle of our tables, and I'll try to show you a picture so you can kind of see what we did. I don't know if it's showing up or not, but we put
kind of. Yes.
plexiglass in between, and then we use blocks of wood to hold the plexiglass up, and then we clean the plexiglass like when we're wiping the tables. So we can get like 12 to a table.
And they sit across from each other and the plexiglass is in between.
Correct. It goes down the center of our table.
Well, that was a very inventive idea. And so they sit like 3 feet or 6 feet apart on the sides then?
3 feet.
3 feet?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Rosie.
And I think that when the state inspector comes, that'll be something I might ask him if it's okay, but we do clean them and the tables and stuff between each. When those kids get up, then when our next group comes in, they have a clean spot.
Great. Very inventive. Thank you, Rosie. Does anyone else have anything to share with the group of what they've come up with or what's working for them? Even if it's not working, please share. You know, if you've tried it and wasn't so good, I think that would help people know too. I think we're all just trying to figure this out, aren't we? The best way to do it. Okay, the next question in the chat that just came in. We have a milk cooler. Should the kids be reaching in to get their own milk? And I believe Beth has addressed that that is not a best practice, that someone should be handing the student the milk with gloves on and putting the milk carton on as best practice. Beth, do you want to elaborate any on that?
Depending on what level you are at, they can be spread out on a tray or in several containers, and they can grab as long as they're not going to be grabbing another milk carton.
Right. Super. Anything else that you would like to talk about? Any sharing that you would like to do? What's working well? I know many of you started school last week. And this is a great opportunity for you to share with the group.
Hey, Sean, this is Julie French. I'm in my mask here. We were wondering, is everybody experiencing the low lunch counts? Because we sure have a very low lunch count here, meaning probably 200 kids less than what we said last year. And I just wondered if everybody else is experiencing that.
Now, Julie, I have to ask, do you have remote learners? Is that some of the issue? No, you do not have remote learners. So
No,
you have a lot of students choosing to bring their own lunch?
Yes, yes. And, you know, we're doing the meals that they like, but we've just really noticed that, you know, a lot of kids. Is that common everywhere, or is it just here?
That's a great question.
We're way down too. I mean, normally we would be doing 26,000. We're doing 15 to 16,000. A lot higher number bringing their own lunches. And of course, the online learners are not getting meals at this point.
I had 2 calls today where they called about other things, but Julie, they were saying the same thing, that their count is way down and they're not doing remote learning. Everyone is in school, but the children are choosing to bring their lunch.
All right, good to know. Thank you.
Our counts have been basically the same. We haven't seen any more bringing their lunches than any other year.
At Auburn Public Schools, our counts are down. Even though we started the AB session this week, our counts have still been down. So I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see if, you know, maybe the initial back to school, if as we get into school, hopefully, and things settle down, hopefully, that counts will go back up. But I guess that's waiting and seeing what's going to happen. Beth.
Cindy M had mentioned that they're also having some lower lunch counts, and she thinks it's because the families are uncertain of what to expect to, you know, or if they're going to, so it's just easier for them to send cold lunches, and it's a mental adjustment. But there is some fear out there that people are afraid that they can contact COVID through food. That has not been found at this time. Although with it could change, but at this time it's not proven anywhere that it's through food, through the contact. So that could be why your counts are down.
Yeah, I know in Arlington, you know, we put everything on, so some of the kids think it's going to take too long because they're standing in line and they're on their dots and they're way out the hallway, and so that I do know is making a difference also.
Okay, let's see what else we have in our chat box. As I move on down, on glasses of water, can we stagger them on a table too? Do they need to have a cover on them? I would think they could be staggered at, once again, back to the risk level, Beth, right? Depending upon the risk level, they could be staggered on a table. Would it be necessary to have a cover on them?
If they're not under plexiglass, they need to have a cover on them. And that's just because of the particles. You know, if you're breathing or anything, you're going to be spreading. So
like maybe a
must have a mask on.
styrofoam cup with a lid on it would be sufficient. Or someone pouring the water for the child as they come up. Okay. Do we have any new questions in our chat box? Anything that we missed that we need to go back and talk about? What is everyone doing as far as passing out silverware, or should we be using disposable? I think this was talked about at several of our serving up great school meals, that it was whatever the school has decided to do, that some schools were wrapping their silverware, some were having it handed out by staff. Some schools had went disposable. It was really a school's decision on how they were going to be doing their silverware. But the question is, what is everyone else doing? So anyone want to chime into what they are doing with silverware? Hate to call upon people, but yes.
Okay, we are just wrapping the elementaries, their straw and their fork, and then we have one cook stands there and hands them their silverware wrapped and hands them their milk, ask what kind they want. And then for high school, we just grab the fork, the napkin, and do it all because we don't have time to wrap all of them. But at the end of the day, we wrap all of elementaries. We use reel, and we're just passing it all out.
Great, thank you. And gosh, everybody's in the chat box just sharing what they're doing, and which is so nice. Thank you. We have sport kit. We're using silverware in a sleeve. We're using the saddlebags. We're wrapping our own silverware, elementary sport kits, wrapping, disposable cutlery kits. So thank you, everyone. It looks like just a variety of different things to make it work. Depending on the menu, we either pre-wrap or buy plastic. We hand it out to the kids. Secondary served by staff at each station. We had a question, are other schools struggling with U.S. food deliveries? And then someone responded, yes, we are. Yes, all deliveries are really late. So let's talk a little bit about how food deliveries are going, because it seems like maybe it's just not one vendor, but it is more vendors. And then another comment was, yes, late. Any comments on why that's happening and what you've done to help rectify that? U.S. Foods has been struggling with keeping items in stock. I guess you're dealing with it individually with the company and making it work is probably what each and every one of you is doing. But it's good to know that it's just not one school. It's kind of a common problem that's happening right now. And of course, it's the beginning of the school year and probably getting their routes all in order. And so that just takes time. So thank you on all those comments. Will you have the bleach recipe for sanitizers and disinfectants? Probably, I bet Beth can accommodate. Linda. Nice comments about Cashway. Beth, I have been buying the produce locally, checking on gloves. Another comment, we've we don't make the delivery drivers wear masks, but we are having them sign a sheet that says when they show up and leave. Okay. And Brock, why is that just the school's process for deliveries?
Sorry, I had trouble unmuting. That's
No
just that
problem.
we're doing that in case there's a outbreak here or something, or just
the contact tracing.
we're just making sure. And that's what our North Central Health Department required, was for us to track everybody that comes in and out.
Thank you. Are other schools having that process in place for deliveries? Probably depended on the health department and what you've been advised from the health department. Okay. Is there anything else in the chat that we haven't talked about before we end our meeting? I'm looking through real quick, and I think we've addressed everybody's question. Please, if not, speak up.
Sean, did you address the kindergarten teacher question?
I was just looking at that one, Marianne. The question is, our kindergarten teacher just wants to use hand sanitizer before she passes out their milk for milk break. I told her she needs to wear gloves. Well, best practice would be to wear gloves. Beth, yes. Best practice, of course,
Best
is to wear
practice,
gloves.
wear gloves. You could, if you could strongly suggest that she do that.
That's me right here, if you don't mind me saying. I asked, she has been, and she just said she thinks it's such a waste because it takes her a second to pass it out. She just wants to use sanitizer. And we were having trouble getting gloves. We still have plenty in stock, but for 2 weeks I couldn't get any. But now this week I did, but we've never run out. But it's just, I'm worried, what if we do run out?
Right.
But I told her to wear a glove, so.
Yeah, you guys, what level are you at? Do you know?
We're green.
Then you're probably not as, risky as someone else, but you still can.
Yes, I just want to keep it that way.
Yeah, right. And that's why these guidances are in place, is so that you keep the kids and are in school. That's our ultimate goal.
Exactly.
But so really encourage her to, and then go from that. And then if not, she needs to use lots of hand sanitizer.
Yes. I hate to ask one more question, but I've been worried about this ever since it started. When everyone gets their deliveries in, all their boxes, you know how they said you can't touch any box that's contaminated. I mean, is everyone just wiping boxes, spraying boxes, or just letting it's almost impossible to do that. Are people taking, what kind of precautions when they get all their delivery boxes in?
I go ahead and glove up and wear gloves when I deal with my boxes.
Yes, same here, but I was worried about, like, when I got my fresh fruits and vegetables in from Omaha, from Greenberg, I took everything with gloves. We dumped them in different boxes that have been sitting for, weeks, put them in the fridge, or else put them without the box. And freezer, they say it don't kill in the freezer. So you think all those boxes you put in the freezer, you can't wipe them all down. I guess I kind of was going overboard in the beginning. I didn't know what people are doing.
Everybody's going to do it a little bit differently. There are widespread thoughts and research on whether it does stay on the box's surfaces. So as long as you wash your hands and you don't have any raw food in a box, you're fine.
Yes. Okay.
This is a good question. Should we be having our helpers in the kitchen stop in a bathroom to wash hands before coming into the kitchen, or can they wash in the wash sink in the kitchen?
How about a hand sink in the kitchen?
That would be a hand sink. Yes,
Yeah, they can do the hand sink in the kitchen would be the best. If they want to do if you want them to do a double wash, then then have them wash in the restroom and then come into the kitchen and wash again. That's if you want them. You don't have to have them do a double wash, but if you want them to, that you could do that.
And Karen, you know, your question, will someone from your team be an advocate to U.S. Foods? I am at the point where I will only get brown box items and not order from them at all. And I'm sorry you're having such a difficult experience with U.S. Foods. Unfortunately, I think that is going to be going to someone at U.S. Foods. And we had a gentleman on from U.S. Foods on serving up greater school meals. Randy, and I'm sorry, Beth, I can't remember Randy's last name.
Randy Wallace.
Randy Wallace. And I would send you that direction first to ask to speak to Randy Wallace and directly, or have him give you a call back to voice your concerns. You know, every indication from whenever I've heard him speak is that they want to know about concerns so that they can address those. That would be the avenue I would send you down. And then the next avenue I would send you down is to communicate with Chad Moore in USDA Foods, since they have the contract for delivery of USDA Foods, the brown box, and he may be able to assist you more since he has worked with US Foods. Okay. Anything else that we can address before we end our chat today? If not, gosh, we look forward to seeing you in September. Beth, did you have anything?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm good.
I believe we're scheduled for September 9th.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So once again, thank you for all your hard work and thanks for joining us today.